Alright, so are you a bit overwhelmed on how to get started with AutoCAD for beginners? So this video is all about that. So really getting familiar with the interface and how it works, getting started with your first drawings, and how to actually start working like a pro faster than ever. So let's get started. Alright, so one of the questions I get asked by a lot of beginners is if they need the full AutoCAD or AutoCAD LT, so that's just that light version, aka cheaper version, and I really recommend AutoCAD LT because especially for anyone working with spatial design, so interior designers, which is who a lot of the students that I work with, as well as any interior architects or renovators, things like that. When you're working in that environment, you really only need to use AutoCAD for its 2D capabilities because there are other softwares out there that are going to be much more appropriate for 3D representation. So AutoCAD LT is a fraction of the price, has nearly every single kind of feature you would need in a 2D drawing program, and it just works really well, and it means you're still really compatible with all the other disciplines and professionals using AutoCAD. So when you get started, you'll open up a screen that'll look similar to this. When you get started, you want to make sure you open it up with the right template. So I'm going to click on this little down arrow next to New, and I really recommend anyone who's just getting started to use either the AutoCAD LT ISO or AutoCAD ISO if you have the full version of AutoCAD. You can also download some templates from online. I have some templates in my shop, linked down in the description. And basically the template is going to mean you have it set up in a way that it's really usable for you. But if you're just starting from scratch, that AutoCAD LT ISO or AutoCAD ISO template will be really good to have as well. So I'm going to just open up the AutoCAD LT ISO template. So what you can see, this is just a really blank kind of space for us to get drawing in. Now let's look at the basics of the interface. Now first things first, when you open AutoCAD, you're going to see this really big black background. Now the easiest way to navigate this is going to be if you have a really dinky scroll wheel mouse. Do not think that you have to have anything fancy. A scroll wheel mouse is so much better than a touchpad, and in my opinion a scroll wheel mouse is also better than like a fancy Mac mouse as well, because those typically will have sometimes the scroll doesn't always quite catch the way you want it to, and I think a scroll wheel mouse gives you just a lot more flexibility. Now, the scroll wheel mouse means that if I scroll up, I can zoom in. If I scroll down, I can move, zoom out. And so that's basically pushing up, gonna go in, pulling out, gonna go out. Now, this is going to be the basics of navigating, and when you actually have the scroll wheel mouse, you can also hold down the scroll wheel, so click, and it turns into a pan, and that means you can actually just move around without zooming in and out, and it's really quite simple to just navigate around your drawing. So once you have a little bit of familiarity about moving around this drawing space, what you want to do is go to your ribbon menus. So all of the things that you need in AutoCAD are going to be up here on these ribbon menus. Now, if you have full AutoCAD, it will be that there's a couple of different options up here, including Express Tools. But for right now, the main ones you really need to get started are going to be all on the Home tab ribbon, because that's going to be everything that you need to get started. So, what is an AutoCAD command? So the commands are going to be what you get AutoCAD to do. So line, that's a command. Polyline, more on that in a second, that's a command. All of these are different commands, and you could click on these little buttons to make sure AutoCAD knows which command you want to go forward with, but my best advice for beginners is to get started learning typed commands. Typed commands are going to make it where you can work a lot faster and just be a lot more efficient with using the software, and you're not constantly trying to hunt for the little button for what you need it to do. So what do we mean by typed commands? So if I just start typing the word line and press enter, I actually can then just start drawing some lines by clicking on my screen, and when I'm done, just press enter and we have some lines. They're beautiful. Now, historically, you would used to have to always type your commands in the command line. That's this big white bar down here. If you don't see it on your computer, that's fine. Sometimes it will be kind of floating like this. Sometimes it's docked down here, and sometimes it disappears. But you don't really need it anymore, because now you can actually just start typing anywhere. Type circle, press enter, and you'll actually be able to start drawing a circle. So that's the command. You really want to get familiar with these typed commands though, because that's going to be how you can really make sure you're working fast and efficiently with the software. Now, what commands do you want to know? So there are a lot in this draw category, a few down here that are really helpful. And so I would really recommend getting familiar with what the line, polyline, circle, arc, rectangle, ellipse, hatch, and the spline commands do. And I would also recommend getting familiar with what move, rotate, trim, and extend, it's hiding under there, copy, mirror, fillet, or fillet, depending on kind of how you've been taught to pronounce it, stretch, scale, and array, and offset. So all of these types of commands and all of these types of commands are going to be really helpful to learn. Now, I've just said learn the typed commands, but now I'm pointing to a bunch of buttons. The reason I'm pointing to the buttons is because they actually are really helpful as you're starting to learn. So if I hover over each of these, it not only will explain to me what these commands do, but it also gives me the typed command to type in order to activate this command. So for polyline, I actually can just start typing PL and it'll go to polyline, but it's P-line. For line, I can start typing line. It's actually just L. You can actually get line going from just the command L, and really make sure all your typed commands work. And I'm going to say 99% of 2D drawings can be created with a lot of detail just using the commands in these two little panels here. Now, if you want a cheat sheet for some good commands to work, as well as little pieces of paper that you can cut out and put on either side of your computer screen, I do have one in my free resource library, which is linked down below. Alright, so now that you have some familiarity with using typed commands and you know the different typed commands that you should get familiar with, there are some other things that I think are really important, especially for beginners to get to grips with first, where they just start off on the right foot. And that is using layers and managing your properties. So I'm going to draw a big rectangle around these lines and just press the delete key. And I'm actually going to make it where we have two new panels on screen, and that's going to be the layers panel and or layers properties panel, and then the properties panel itself. So I just start typing LA, I can finish it, and just press enter. This new layer properties manager thing shows up. If I start typing properties, we have a new properties panel showing up. Now, obviously they're taking over a lot of the screen right now, so I can actually put them where they're kind of back to back like this, stacked on top of each other. Now, these work hand in hand. Layers are going to be basically as if you were drawing by hand, how you can start to organize different information. If you need, lighting on a particular layer, that's a great place for it. If you need walls on particular layers or different types of walls on particular layers, that's a great place for it. It's also a really great way of controlling your line weights. If you want a video on line weights, I have one of those that I'll put up here. So layers are really important. In an empty file, this is going to look really boring. There's just going to be a layer 0, which is the default layer, and then your property is going to be all kind of set up for layer 0. So to show you what it looks like in practice, I'm going to go to one of my template files. Alright, so as you can see, when you actually have a lot of different layers set up, then you actually will have a lot of different things kind of set up here, and they can be put into different colors. They can be set up with different line types, so dash lines, continuous lines, dotted lines, all these different things, and different line weights. There are all these different settings you can do, and it really will help make your drawing look better if you start to use layers. It also means your drawings are more organized, so you can actually, if you have, especially for interiors, if you have a floor plan with all the walls and all the doors, but also all the furniture, all the, finished materials on the floor, all these things are in one drawing, sometimes it's going to be really important that you can okay, let's make a drawing with just the architecture. Let's make a drawing with just the furniture and the architecture. And then let's make a drawing with just the finished floor materials represented, no furniture furniture. You want to be able to turn these on and off, and putting everything in a layer means you can do that. So to see this in action, if you look, all these little purple kind of pieces of furniture are the planned furniture layer. And if I had all of these in a floor plan drawing and I didn't want to have any furniture showing, all I would need to do is turn it off and it wouldn't show. This is for really quick turn off and on to help you kind of visualize it. If it needs to be a more permanent turn off and on, you would want to click on the little sunshine to freeze it. And that means you're not necessarily having the information is still there, but it's no longer going to be visible, so you don't have to worry about it. So if you are just getting started with working on a new drawing, all you would need to do to create your own layer is just click on this little button here or do Alt N. Again, hover over it, gives me that shortcut key. Shortcut keys are going to be your friend in AutoCAD. And we can make a new layer, and let's just say plan walls. And this means what we can do is, let's make all of our walls, let's say they're all going to be yellow. Okay, but they're going to print black. I'll show you that in a second. They're going to be a continuous line. It's just not a dash line or anything like that. And they're going to be, let's say, thick lines because the walls are thick. So I've gone back to my template file where I already have some layers set up, and we can actually start focusing on drawing. Now, when you get started with drawing, especially for any kind of architectural or interiors work, I would really recommend making sure you have one of two settings turned on. Either Orthomode, that's going to mean you can draw nothing but straight across, straight up and down, straight across, straight up and down lines. Very helpful for things like floor plans. Or you have polar tracking on, and this can be helpful because you can still lock it to, a 90 or 0 degree angle, but you can also lock it to, I can also draw 45 degree angles or 30 degree angles. So for example, if it's on polar tracking at 30, I draw some lines, I can lock it at 30, I can lock it at 90, I can lock it at 60, and so on. So it's all about making sure you use one of these two settings to make it where you can actually monitor the lines and the angles you're drawing, because if you just did it freehand, it's going to be really hard to make sure it's perfectly set up, and you could really get yourself into trouble, especially when it comes to, drawings for construction and things like that. You want to be as precise as possible, and you don't need something to be accidentally drawn at a weird angle. Okay, so for now I'm going to turn on Ortho mode. I have layers set up and I'm ready to get started. Alright, I wanted to hop on real quick to add one more thing before you get started drawing, and that's to check your units. So to check to make sure you're drawing in the correct units for your design, all you need to do is type units, press enter, and this little window is gonna pop up, and this is where you can set things like your precision as well as the type of unit. So right now I'm in millimeters. Say I want to go to inches. I can say architectural type of kind of naming. I can say I want it to be super precise up to 256th, and I can even go up my precision on my angle degrees. So always check, if you're starting a drawing from scratch, that your drawing units are set to the units that you need to use. Now, to actually get started with any drawing, all you need to do is start thinking through the different commands that you know from, especially that draw and modify, and just start drawing. You have to have some understanding of how these drawings are supposed to look, so always be researching what plan drawings look like, what section drawings look like, things like that. But really, all you have to do is start drawing. So I'm going to just work through and draw a really small floor plan of a bedroom, just to show you how these commands can actually come together, how the layers can be used, and how I'm actually going to use all these little pieces in the template. Now, at this stage, to save some time, I'm going to use some blocks. basically what blocks are these groupings of different lines that you can then do a lot of different things with. So in this template, I've set it up where I have a lot of different blocks. So I have these door blocks, so we can just add in the lines that we need for a door. I also have some furniture blocks and blocks in both elevation and in plan. So basically I just have a selection of commonly used things that are easy for me to grab. You can also just download a lot of blocks from the internet. There are so many places to get blocks. But the intention here is, draw things from scratch when you need to, but always kind of either create your own blocks or download blocks just to make your life a little bit easier. So I'm going to just grab a door, Control C, Control V, and get back to the drawing. And with that, we have the start of a nice but simple drawing. Now, there are a couple of things I wanted to go over before I started to print this drawing, and that's going to be how to consider drawing in AutoCAD. So I've just drawn this, and you'll notice I was starting to type in a lot of different dimensions and things like that. I was typing those in 1-to-1. So I'm working in millimeters right now. Millimeters is what we typically use here in the UK. When I was working in the US, obviously we were using feet and inches. And so what you would do when you start drawing is you just draw the actual dimensions. So if I printed this out 1-to-1, it would be the full size of the room. Only when you get ready to print and when you get ready to add annotations do you want to adjust the scale. So right now, if I go down here, this scale is set to 1-to-50. That's not the scale of this drawing, it's the scale of any annotations. So I have a whole video on annotation scale and how to consider it. It can be something that's a little bit more complex, so it needs its own video. But basically, right now I've just drawn everything at 1-to-1, but if I was going to go in and add any dimensions or text or titling or things like that, I would want to make sure I set my annotation scale to be the actual scale of the eventual drawing, because that's going to mean that my dimensions and my text appear appropriately and appear consistently when I have set that annotation scale. Alright, so now that we have a floor plan, let's take it into paper space. So right now we've been working in something called model space, and when you're ready to print, you take it into paper space. Paper space is just going to be, if I click on one of these layout tabs down here, it's just going to be basically a piece of paper that has a window, a viewport, into the model space. Now if I double click, I can actually pan and zoom in and out onto this viewport as I would in model space. But if I double click on the outside, it's just a piece of paper again. Now, right now, if I printed this right as is, the drawing would not be to scale and it would look kind of crappy. So what I'm going to do is set it up where we can really make sure it has all of the makings of being a nice looking drawing. Alright, to get started, what I'm going to do is type in just page setup. So like almost any other program in the world, we can adjust the page setup. So here we are, we're in layout 1. I want to modify it. And this is where I'm going to set things up to be as, clean and clear as possible for me to make some adjustments. I typically recommend always plotting or printing. Plotting is just the large format version of it, but so you'll see the word plot a lot in AutoCAD. Setting it to DWG to PDF. So plot or print to PDF first, because then that means you actually have a record copy, and also you can double check things like line weights and things like that on a PDF copy in a little bit more of a easier way. Also, with so much digital distribution, the PDF is going to be your easiest way to transfer things between people rather than having to just straight up print it. So DWG to PDF. Choose your paper size. I'm going to do this on an A3 full bleed. This could be, an Arch D, Arch C, 11 by 17, 8.5 by 11, kind of whatever it needs to be for your purposes. But the key is choose one of the full bleed options. So I'm going to choose ISO full bleed A3. And that's all good. Landscape's good. All of this looks great. But I am going to set it up so it says the monochrome plot style. Now, once you get more advanced into AutoCAD, you can certainly start to play with different plot styles, but for beginners and for really just anyone who maybe is working on their own and maybe needs to share drawings back and forth, I really recommend using the monochrome plot style because it's a default plot style. You can ensure everybody has it, and if you open your file on a different computer or someone doesn't necessarily have your other plot style set up, you can be sure that it looks great because you're actually controlling everything in your layers and you're not relying everything on the plot style. Again, this is something I really recommend just for beginners, just because setting up a plot style and making sure it looks great can take some time and take some energy. So it's just easier to do it this way, in my opinion. Then I recommend saying display plot styles, and this is going to mean my beautiful Technicolor version of the drawing is going to print black and white. So if I click OK, click close, I can see this drawing now looks black and white. I can also double click, turn off this grid. I find it distracting, and we actually have a drawing that starts to look like a drawing. Now, before you go and print it, I think it's always good practice to set it up where it has like titling, title blocks, all these different types of things. Again, these are things you can download off the internet or you can draw your own. But for this example, I'm going to actually grab a title block that you can actually buy on my shop. But again, just download one or make one yourself if you don't want to kind of go to this. But I'm just going to grab this A3 horizontal title block. So I'm just going to actually copy and paste it. And I'm going to actually make it where it's at 0, 0 in the properties. So I know it's going to be straight up onto the main thing. And now I have my title block. I would go in and like edit this information. So I would just go in and edit, my name, the name of the file, the project date, all this kind of thing. But then also, let's make it where the viewport itself is set up and it's at a correct scale. So right now, the drawing, first of all, is off in the corner. And if I go in, the scale of the drawing, now here, because we're in paper space, this isn't the annotation scale, this is going to be the actual scale of the drawing according to the page size that you've set up. So it's just this random decimal point right now. I'm going to do 1 to 20, I'm going to pan, and it's a little tight, but we don't have any annotation, so I'll just leave it at that, and double click on the outside, and all of a sudden, I have a really quick 1 to 20 drawing of a floor plan of a bedroom, and I can actually then print it and we'll have a really nice presentation with the title block as well as with different line weights. So let's go to print. So if I just type plot, enter, I have it already set up from my page setup before. I click OK, save it in a good place, and it will load up onto your machine. Now my placeholder logo isn't showing, but that's just because I was pulling from the template. But if I zoom in, we can actually start to see the differences in the line weights. So I can see that this furniture is a lot thinner, the walls are a lot thicker. And that's how you go in and plot or print a drawing from AutoCAD. Now, obviously, this is just one drawing. A typical project, you're going to have, plan drawings, multiple sections or elevations, details, all these different things. And in that case, I definitely don't recommend just plotting it, because then you're going to be plotting it one single sheet at a time. Instead, what I would recommend is do the batch plot command. Now, I have a whole video on how to batch plot that I'll link up here, but it's going to be the best way to make sure you can efficiently create PDFs of all the drawings that you have in a single file. So I know that was a whirlwind tour of getting started with AutoCAD, but hopefully it gives you an idea of how to get started and get started on the right foot. Now, I really recommend, again, use that scroll wheel mouse and getting comfortable with typed commands. And then if I had a third rule that you must follow, and that is using your layers and being really diligent with your layers. Now, if you wanted a more comprehensive ins and outs of AutoCAD LT, because that's the one I love to use, I do have an AutoCAD for Interior Designers course. This course walks you through both the core skills as well as a number of key workflows, including different drawing types, how to set up a project for different design phases, as well as styling projects in different ways. It even has a whole module on how you can actually set up your own templates like I have. And a special deal I have just for my YouTube viewers is if you use the coupon code YTACAD at checkout, you'll get $100 off the regular price. Links down in the description on more about that course and how to get access. Let me know in the comments if you had any other questions on AutoCAD, AutoCAD for interior design, and interior design software in general. And if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and get notifications when I release a new video every Monday. Thanks for listening.